This is the Ballin' Out Podcast, your weekly breakdown of Red Raider basketball from Double T 97.3 and Double T Sports Network.com.
Welcome into another edition of the Gaslighters Podcast, where we're talking Red Raider basketball, catching you up on the week that was and looking ahead to the next couple of matchups for Texas Tech. Clint Scott, Rob Breaux on this week. And Rob, it has been an eventful week. A win over Arizona, most recently a win over Cincinnati. Right now, you got things rolling. 3-game winning streak dating back to the ugly win over Kansas State, but still a win there. What have we learned over the past 3 games of the Red Raiders?
You know, I'm going to go back further. I'm going to go back to the UCF game.
Okay.
Because Grant McCaslin said after that game, basically, the team didn't play very hard defensively. Mm-hmm. And he kind of got on them. And you saw a little bit of an improvement in the Utah swing there at BYU and Utah. And then Kansas State didn't score in the final 8 minutes from the field. Arizona didn't score from the final 8 minutes from the field. I think they had some free throws. But they went on a long stretch. I think the final 5.5 minutes.
5:15 Arizona, 5:50 for Kansas State.
And then Cincinnati happened. And you go down there and you say, you know, they're not a very good shooting team, but they're pretty good defensively. Mm-hmm. They're going to make it ugly. And you score 7 points in the first 8 minutes. And you're like, okay, it's another ugly game. But then you start shutting them down, and they don't shoot well at all, and your hands at everybody's faces, and your perimeter defense is transformed from pretty poor in the non-con to borderline elite here in Big 12 play. I mean, you're holding a bunch of teams to 20-25% from 3. Pretty good. I don't know. I think you had a real complete game against Cincinnati beyond the first 6 or 7 minutes, and that's without Darren Williams.
Right. I mean, sluggish play ever since he got, I'm dinged up is not a fair term, but whatever happening at Kansas State with that ankle stuff is never going to be fun, and it's also very tricky. You never know how much it's going to affect. Obviously, it's been good enough to play on, but he's been noticeably different over the past couple of games. So you went back to UCF. I want to go back all the way to the start of the season then, because when we came into the year without seeing any of this roster, play on the court together anyways, as it's constructed, it felt like you could be able to win in a bunch of different ways. The offense should be better. Rebounding should be better. You should be a pretty decent shooting team at least. But you were going, okay, well, it looks like if you can stick with like the Grant McCaslin brand identity of defense and toughness, stuff like that, and then add in some offense and multiple guys that can score the ball, you might be able to win in a low, ugly sort of game. You may be able to win in a shootout and just find ways to do that. Well, up until Big 12 play, and then even when you go into the UCF game you're talking about, it was in those games where it came down to the wire, you were losing them. I mean, you can go to St. Joe's. You can certainly go to that UCF loss. You can go to Texas A&M in between there. And I think you have flipped a switch, and now you're finding ways to win those games, because now we've seen different examples where we've seen you win just a ugly game in Manhattan. Defensive battle, no one's shooting the ball while everyone's turning it over. And now I think Cincinnati, we've seen you win an offensive game where, like you said, Cincinnati had the best 3-point defense coming in to Tuesday night. And especially in the first half, you shot it really well, contested threes too. And that's been something that we knew was a strength of yours. But you go another game too, BYU, another example where it's not quite an offensive shootout. It's not a defensive slugfest. It's just a tough Big 12 game. And down the stretch, you find ways to make plays in a game that is back and forth. And so I think we're seeing you just figure out how to win games. And part of that is when JT Toppin, when he's good, and he's been really good all year, but he had a little bit of a slouch there against Iowa State where he was dinged up. When he's good, he is a great first option. But then you have guys like Darren Williams who can score. You have guys like Elijah Hawkins who have outstandingly picked up their play. But we also have the surge of a Christian Anderson, or like against Cincinnati, a great game from Kevin Overton. So it's really been a total team stretch, if you will.
This is starting to look offensively, not defensively.
Also, I didn't mean to leave out Chance McMillan, too. He's just been Mr. Steady.
Certainly. It's starting to look like offensively the team that went to the Sweet 16 under Mark Adams, where you have Bryson Williams, and he's going to get you points in Big 12 play certainly every night. Mr. Consistency. But then it was a cast of characters offensively. Adonis Arms goes for 20. The next guy goes for 20. On the next night, it's Kevin O'Banner going for 20. Some nights, Kevin O'Banner would have a double-double, and then the next night he would have 3 points and 2 rebounds, and 2 other guys would have combined for 25. And that kind of ambiguous offense, the team is good offensively. And I think you're really seeing that. Now, you don't have the best defense in the country like that team had, so you're going to have to find more consistency at some point to really go far in a tournament. But I just think the open nature, like Kevin Overton hadn't done anything in 2 weeks, really, of note. And he had some good games early, but you were really kind of missing Kevin Overton. And I thought he was pretty bad in one of the games leading up to last night. And then he scores 12 in the first half. And 3 threes and a 3-point play. And really got you off the mat in that first half.
Yeah, because
spark.
When it was 14-7, you're going, or at least I was sitting going, okay, this is kind of the game I thought would be here in Cincinnati, because this is the game that Cincinnati wants to play in there, especially
in
on the home
Kansas,
court.
just what was like 40-33 or something in the final.
So higher football scores.
Yeah. So I think the nature of the offense is right now. I think you're going to get a good game from JT Toppin and or Darian Williams. And those are kind of the Bryson Williams role. And then Christian Anderson, Elijah Hawkins, Kevin Overton, Chance McMillan. Somebody else will go for 15. And some nights, when you score 81, 3 of those guys will go for 15.
I like the comparison to that Mark Adams team. Like you mentioned, they're a little bit different defensively because they're not quite as elite. But I mean,
I would 6'7".
Yeah, I would look at it too, though. I think they're better offensively and have a higher ceiling than that team to also make up for it on nights where, because you have so many shooters.
Yeah.
But you also have guys like I think something that gets overlooked a little bit. I mean, and it's important to do this every single time you hear something about Chance McMillan. You just hear how good of a 3-point shooter he's been, and it has been outstanding. But he's also not afraid to drive and make something and create something when that needs to happen. Christian Anderson right now, as he gets more and more minutes, by the way, led you in minutes against Cincinnati, firmly has grasped a role on this team and has been playing not just a lot of minutes, but important stretches of the game, like against Arizona too, a couple games ago. But like Christian Anderson, I mean, he's no fear behind the arc, but what else can he do? He'll drive, and if something's not working, he will find something in the paint and either drive to the rim and have a close-range shot, or he'll kick it and find you another open look. So these guys, I think, are clicking together. First couple of games in Big 12 play in that Utah stretch is kind of where I thought it was happening. Elijah Hawkins, going back to him, speaking of creating, has done that tremendously for this team. Best in the Big 12, maybe best in the country. He misses time early. That's really hard for a point guard, especially just to be like, hey, now I'm going to jump back into this lineup that's kind of figured some things out, especially a lineup so talented as you have. I think he and Federico and he and JT Toppin were kind of the first ones to click, and now it seems like everyone has clicked. And finding that chemistry with a bunch of new guys, regardless of how talented they are, is a challenge in the transfer portal age. And it's a challenge for every single team, but I think they're getting over that hump offensively. So when you're looking at like passing as a team and driving and knowing where the other guy's going to be at in your half-court sets, I think you're just getting to that point.
Well, offensively, that's another major difference between this team and that Sweet 16 team is you have the facilitator. And you look at last night with Elijah Hawkins against Cincinnati. Sorry, it's not last night. You could be listening to this anytime. You look at that Tuesday game against Cincinnati, and you look at Elijah Hawkins and say 8 points, 3 assists. It's not very good. But if you had any point guard at Texas Tech give you 8 and 3 in the last 5 years, that's a pretty good night from a point guard here. Mm-hmm. But you just have become accustomed to 9 assists because he's been so good in Big 12 play. And I expect him to keep that up. I think you just were kind of having to find it in a different way last night. And obviously a little truncated time there. But I think this team has meshed really well. And it took a lot of time. But you start looking at the schedule. And we don't have to wrap up Cincinnati quite yet. But before the Iowa State game, I said, if you get to the Iowa State game healthy, which you did for the most part, Texas Tech would win the next 5. Mm-hmm. And I doubled down after Kansas State, even the ugly game. And now you've beaten Arizona. You've beaten Cincinnati. Now, in the Big 12, anything can happen. But Oklahoma State at home and TCU at home are 2 really good opportunities to really put some distance between the top tier of the Big 12, which I think you belong in right now, the middle tier of the Big 12, and then the bottom tier of the Big 12. I think we're really seeing some tiers come through.
I do too, because I think right now you're finding the separation here early of 6 teams, and you're in those 6 teams because the other 5 is Kansas, West Virginia, Arizona, Houston, and Iowa State. And Houston, the lone undefeated team right now, no one was going to go through the Big 12 undefeated, and I know Houston doesn't have a loss yet. Maybe here in a couple of weeks, we'll see. It's going to be at Houston. It'd be great. But Iowa State has obviously dropped one against West Virginia now, and so that ice is broken. Oh, this is Cyclones going to go undefeated.
And then they were mad.
Yeah. I think you're seeing that separation of those 6, and it's going to dwindle down. You know, you'll probably turn into here in a couple of weeks when now it feels like 5 teams, and then when you get into the back half of Big 12 play, it's going to feel like here's these 4 or 5 teams that could win the Big 12 championship. So right now, there's work to be done to keep yourself in that conversation and keep yourself in striking distance, knowing you have yet to play, some of your tougher opponents. You played one with Iowa State. I think you played one with Arizona. You're going to see them again at Arizona. That's obviously going to be a tougher challenge. But I thought last night, Tuesday night's game against Cincinnati offered a very interesting challenge because they came in with just a couple of wins in the Big 12, much like you're going to see against Oklahoma State here next. Both of those wins against some of the, I don't want to say lesser opponents, but some of the opponents in the Big 12 that aren't playing very good basketball right now, and had lost to everyone else that they played well. But that's a Cincinnati team that came in with some really nice expectations, a lot of returning pieces. The pieces that didn't return that they added into it, I think they got better talent-wise. And for whatever reason, for Wes Miller's squad, they haven't put it together. But I think they're a type of team of why the Big 12 is so deep and so hard to play in, because that's a Cincinnati team that came in ranked and at any time could figure things out with whatever's going on over there with Cincinnati and could rattle off 3 or 4 wins. And most likely that's going to happen with them starting at home. And so you were trying to make sure you helped them continue on their run of losing some games against good opponents. And you did just that. And I think that also speaks to the lessons you've learned over the past couple of weeks and the strides you've taken. So now you turn your attention to doing the same thing of don't let a good opportunity against the Pokes slip away at home. And same thing against TCU, because if you are going to win the league, you protect home court, and you especially protect home court to teams like that are coming in.
And in the Big 12 world for Texas Tech across the next however many games, you've kind of put yourself in a thin margin at home because you lost 2.
Yep.
You need to win your home games. But you have created a wide margin on the road because you've won 4 straight to start the season. If you go 500 the rest of the way, that's a winning record in Big 12 play on the road. Mm-hmm. You have 6 more road games. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's way above 500. That's 7-3.
Yeah.
So, and now you have Houston on the road. You have Kansas on the road. There are definitely some road games out there that are tenuous. But I think, I actually think you match up decently with Kansas. Houston feels like a terrible matchup. If KJ Adams is out for any kind of extended time, Kansas will be fine, but I don't think they'll be great like they were.
I actually think the offense is better without KJ Adams in it.
That's a thought from a lot of people.
But I agree. I think you match up really well against Kansas. I think Houston's the worst matchup you have in the Big 12.
Yeah. And that's just frustrating because of what they do and how they do it. But Oklahoma State, the win, loss, struggle?
I mean, I've got this as a big win. Oklahoma State right now, their wins over Kansas State, who's 1-5 right now in the Big 12, and then Colorado, who is 0-4 in the Big 12, easily the worst team in the Big 12 right now.
Did you see that Colorado game last night? Tuesday night? They were up by 10 or 12, and BYU went on a 40-6 run or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, you were saying.
Oh, that's who Oklahoma State's. I mean, they were the ultimate rebuild for a Big 12 team. There's a few new coaches in it, but for Steve Lutz's squad, you knew it was going to be a challenge. And I do think they have some nice pieces. Abu Usman is legit. Marcellus Avery, legit. Bryce Thompson has been a solid Big 12 player for a while now. That's kind of your three-headed monster, if you will. Like a puppy Cerberus. It's not a big Cerberus, but a puppy Cerberus. Sure. So as long as you keep those guys in check and they don't just have like an otherworldly game and you keep doing the things that you've done well, again, it's what Coach McCaslin will do over there is you focus on the next opponent and you don't let them catch you off guard. But if you do that, especially on your home court, you're a Sunday game, so you're the only game in the Big 12 being played, I think you will take care of business. And especially if the offense is on, this could be a big, maybe the biggest margin of victory in the Big 12 you see this year.
Robert Jennings.
Yep.
I was with you until the end. I'm not nervous about the game. I think Texas Tech will win the game. For whatever reason, games against Oklahoma State are close. So overtime, whatever it is, I think you'll win the game. I think there's going to be some kind of struggle, and somebody who's never scored more than 20 points is going to go full Lindy Waters and make 17 threes. And I think it'll be a close game. Same with TCU. I think you'll beat TCU next Wednesday, I believe.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But I think that'll be another closer game. I think you probably pull away from TCU easier than you could pull away from.
See, I'm the exact opposite. I think TCU is going to be one of those NCAA tournament bubble teams in the end. If the TCU team that showed up to Waco a couple of games ago shows up to Lubbock, I mean, I think you'll win that game, but I think you'll have your hands full. And again, but to the Oklahoma State stuff, I think you have the examples. You do have the examples. You do have the examples of like, why is this Oklahoma State team? Why are we having struggles with them? But I think this is another chance if you're going to be the team that you think you can be. You don't have that type of game. You don't have like the history play into it. It's Oklahoma State. They always hang. It could be the worst Oklahoma State team of all time. They still hang tough. I think that you can see a focused Red Raider team put it to them. But as you said, the other hand is always, it's the Big 12. There's a reason why it's tough every single night, and you don't just go ahead and put it in the win column. But I'll take a big win on Sunday.
All right, let's land the plane there, brother. Final thoughts? No, not.
Oh, sorry. I love the way that you're playing right now. If I went quick likes and dislikes from things we haven't just drilled all year long on the Gaslighters podcast, I love the way Christian Anderson is playing, and I love as a freshman how bright of a future he has. I love defensively what you have done, specifically with your guards. They have gotten so much better. Elijah Hawkins is a very special player. Dislikes, I would love to see Kerwin Walton just find traction. He's kind of a mystery, a conundrum, because he can still do it. Still has the talent there. And then this isn't a dislike for play. It's just I want to see a healthy Darian Williams, and that's really nothing you can control.
Yeah. Man, with Kerwin, he either needs to play better or not play. Mm-hmm. And that's frustrating because he's going on year 3 in the program. He stuck around through the coaching change. He was so good last year. He improved. He worked hard. But for whatever reason, it's just he lost his mojo.
And maybe that's something, obviously we're not over on the sideline, but sometimes you see guys that get a jump start when they say, hey, you're going to be first off the bench. And not we're punishing you, you might need another look. Because, you've had several guys that get starter type of minutes and starter type of impact off of the bench. You saw one from Iowa State here, Curtis Jones, a couple of games ago. But that's exactly what Chance McMillan was last year. He was first off the bench, but it was really like, hey, he's off the bench, wink, wink, but he's a starter. And so, I don't know, maybe that's something you do with him. But for Kerwin Walton, ever since he had whatever happened against St. Joe's and illness or whatever that was, it's been a struggle, and he's looked a little lost. And I think now confidence has become an issue or lack thereof. So hopefully you can get that back, because if you add in the sniper version of Kerwin Walton, who was also playing well defensively and also finding shots for other guys at times and looking like a complete basketball player, if you can get any version of that back, that's just going to be a nice other piece as you get deeper into Big 12 play. So, yeah. Rob's going to show us his free throw form. Beautiful. That's going to do it for us. Thanks for hanging out with us here on the Gaslighters Podcast. Stay tuned to Double T Sports Network for more.